Guys, it's Dr. Dork, and today I discovered that a lot of my friends don't really know how a computer works internally in the way of hardware. So today we're going to be doing a video on how everything in the computer works. So we have here a motherboard. This is just an old standard motherboard. Actually, you can tell it's very old as it does not have any SATA connectors. So the first thing we are going to put into this and show you how it works is a processor. This is it's coated in crap, but it's an Intel Pentium 4 2.4 gigahertz processor. So it's pretty old, but it functions, so we can use it as an example. So we just pop that processor into this socket, make sure that this lever is up when you press it in. Now push it in. Now the processor basically works as a series of millions, if not billions, of transistors working in conjunction with the rest of the components to make the computer run. Now you'll see this big plastic square around the processor. That is where we mount this big fan heatsink combo. That fan and heatsink allows the processor to not overheat whenever you start up the computer. Then you'll see this little three-prong connector. That will generally go into a port that's very close to the fan. So now we have the processor and its cooling device installed. Next up is RAM. Now RAM stands for Random Access Memory. It's basically what allows the computer to store data for a short amount of time as it's going from component to component. So say we're sending data between the processor and the hard drive. It'll basically be shooting through the RAM at extremely high speeds. It's like swap data. It allows you to transfer data, and the more you have, the more you can send. And the higher the frequency... Go in! Huh. Oh, that's my problem. I've been trying to put it in backwards. And the higher the frequency of the RAM, you can see that this is 133 megahertz RAM, which is very, very slow by today's standards. That's how fast you can send data. So really there's two factors in determining how good your RAM is. How fast it is, and how much it can store. So pop those in. So now we have the RAM and the processor, and you know how both of those work. So now we will move on to these big bits of header pins. Now these two big ports are called IDE ports. Those allow you to interface things like this hard drive to it. So you can use an IDE cable, like this one. Plug that into one of the IDE connectors, if it'll go in. Oh, I had it backwards. And then you can take that cable and connect it to the hard drive. And now your computer will be able to transmit data between the motherboard and all of its components and the hard drive. Now IDE is very useful in allowing you to interface other things like this big old DVD-ROM drive. So we can also hook this one up via IDE. Oh, this isn't a good IDE cable. It's kind of like a cheap, like $2 cable. Go in. Yeah, this is also a very old, crappy motherboard, so it's not really going to cooperate well. So we can now plug that in to the CD-ROM drive. Now that little tiny port right there that you probably can't see is used for floppy drives. I don't seem to have a floppy drive on hand right now, so we're not going to demonstrate that one. But it uses a smaller version of a IDE cable. Now IDE is very old and is not the standard interfacing device for the motherboard anymore. The new one is SATA, which stands for Serial ATA, and I don't know what ATA stands for, but I don't know. This is what a SATA cable looks like, and here is a SATA hard drive. You can see that the port is much smaller, and it is also able to transmit data much faster. So now we can move on to, let's go with PCI cards. PCI card stands for PC Interface Card. If I can find one, I will show you how they work. Now, various PCI cards have various purposes. Over here, you can see the PCI ports. There are 3 normal ports, and there's a special PCI port that's used for video cards. Now, this is a modem PCI card, which allows you to connect to the phone lines. You can see that that fits right into a slot like that. So that's why you see these little rectangles on the back of your computer. That's where PCI cards go. Here's one for Ethernet. Here's one that allows you to that converts PCI to USB. USB, SATA. So these, you could add things like audio cards that let you interface PCI to sound, or a video card over in this slot, which will convert PCI to video. Now, moving on from that, sure, you can have a computer, but if it doesn't have anything to be powered by, then it really can't do anything. So over here, this little white header set right here is the power supply connector. And here is a power supply. This is a 270 watt supply, which is a standard size for factory computers. Definitely too small for something if you're building it at home. See how it just plugs in right there? And now you have power to your whole motherboard, but not things like this DVD-ROM drive. The way to supply power to that is with these connectors. These are called Molex connectors. Generally, they don't really have a real name, but Molex is just the company that produces them. So you can just pop that in right there. You also need to do that to your hard drive. Now, newer power supplies, and generally better power supplies, will also have SATA power connectors, which will allow you to power up a SATA hard drive. Now, let's take a look at more fan stuff. This little connector here looks a lot like the one for the CPU, mainly because it's identical to the one in the CPU. This one will connect to headers on the motherboard to power the fan that's inside the power supply. Now we can take another fan, say this little tiny 12-volt fan, and plug this into another spot on the motherboard, if I can find one. Seems that because this is a crappy motherboard, there isn't another one, so we'll just say, yep, that's a completed computer. So it has the motherboard, it has the CPU with its fan, it has RAM, it has a CD-ROM drive, it has a hard drive, it has a power supply, and it has PCI cards. So that's how a computer works. Thanks for watching.